Good morning. Uh, I I don't know. Maybe the coffee hasn't sunk in yet. I jumped in on session two and started talking and presenting with all sorts of enthusiasm. And I was there with about 40 people that said, "Hey, this is session two," and I said, "No, it's session one." But they were right. I was wrong, and I'm always willing to admit that. And so I see now I've got 130 plus folks waiting and watching. My apologies. This right here is how I start my every day, and quite frankly, it's the thing that I have all day. But apparently, it hasn't quite hit me just yet. So, good morning, and my apologies for keeping you waiting. Um, so I think I will start this session as I did the other session by extending to all of you, my beloved staff, a sincere thanks. As I look back and reflect on the months between March and June, I saw incredible displays and awesome displays of creativity, of patience, of dedication, of optimism, and for that I am deeply, deeply appreciative. And respectfully, I would ask for that same level of patience, of optimism, um, and creativity, dedication as we look ahead to the fall. We have been working really, really hard to to build a framework for the safest possible reopening. And the only way this is going to work is if we're together. So again, my apologies. I think we're off to the races now in the right place. That was my mistake. Um, let's begin. So first, StreamYard. This is actually my first time using it. I would say, on the level of expert or pro with Zoom at this point in time. But Zoom has a limit on the membership. There is the interactive piece, which is important. But this platform allows for unlimited viewers and allows an individual to stream on multiple platforms. And so as we look ahead, I see this as being a really powerful communication tool for me to engage with you live and in person. I'm able to also stream on Facebook. And so we're planning two of these types of sessions with families for early August as well. And I see this as being a useful tool for interacting with you going forward. So what I'd like to do this morning is I'm going to talk a little bit about the initial guidance from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education and talk a little bit about where we are in terms of the planning and some pretty big boxes that we've been able to put checks next to. And then my real point here is to hear from you, and the way that I'll be doing so is by monitoring the chat here and responding where appropriate, but really trying to get a sense for what your concerns are, what your ideas are, your thoughts, and what questions you might have. But let me pivot now to a brief overview of the DESE guidance, just to make sure we're operating from the same platform. I'm going to share my screen. And when I do, you will no longer see this face, which might be a blessing for you, but you will hear me. I will not be able to see the chat at that point. But once I'm done with that very short formal piece, you will see me and I will be able to see the chat, and we can proceed in that way. Okay? So let me share here. All right. So again, the idea here this morning is to just give a quick overview of the guidance that's been provided. And I know that some folks have read it pretty closely. They've reached out and shared thoughts and questions and concerns. But I just want to make sure we're operating from the same start place. And then I'll talk a little bit, as I said earlier, about where we are in the planning and when you can expect to hear more from me. Quickly, a colleague I would also consider a dear friend messaged this to me a few weeks ago and said, "Hey, I was just thinking about you. Thought I would," and I saw this. Thought I would share it. And I share this not to make light of any aspect of what it is we're faced with as we look to reopen, but more so to illustrate that there are some pretty defined camps out in the community who have strong thoughts and feelings about what should be happening as we look ahead. And there's not a lot of bridges between those camps. And so for us and for me individually, our decisions are being made based on input, based on feedback, and of course, following the science. So I just want to be really clear about that from the outset. Okay, as far as the DESE guidance goes, I mean, it's no secret that the commissioner and the governor have made clear that it's their priority to see as many students in classrooms for in-person instruction as possible in the fall. And their thinking behind that is supported by the medical community. These are not my comments. These are coming directly from the guidance. It's their belief, based on what the medical community says, that schools have not played a major role in COVID-19 transmission, that infection rates are lower for children. And I know that there's emerging thoughts about that and how it may be a little bit different. But nonetheless, if children are exposed, they're less likely to become infected. And if they are infected, they're less likely to transmit to other people. And so that thinking, also supported by the fact that rates in Massachusetts are among the best, rates of infection of COVID-19 are among the best in the country, has led them to a pretty strong conviction that we should be planning for in-person instruction in the fall. One of the, growing issues of contention involves the masks. The guidance says really clearly that they're required for all adults and students in grades 2 all the way to grade 12. And that it's a family's responsibility to provide the masks. I'll just put a pin in this right now and say that that may be so, but we've planned for scenarios where students do not have masks. We've ordered thus far about 250,000 disposable masks in prep for next year, and that was the first round of orders. We intend to order more, but DESE has made clear, the state's made clear that masks are a family's responsibility. Among the two most significant factors in mitigating the transmission of COVID-19, masks are one of them, and physical distancing is another. As we should know by now, the state is recommending 6 feet of physical distancing in classrooms between students and a minimum of 3 feet. This here again has become a point of contention, as you might imagine, when you offer a range that invites lots of discussion about what's best and what is just okay. But in any case, there's more science to support the fact that 3 feet is very significant in terms of mitigating the spread of COVID. And then classroom configuration. I mean, we're essentially departing from all of the research around best practice in the classroom, collaboration, interaction. The configuration of classrooms really calls for desks to be all facing the same direction and spaced appropriately. I know that we have a number of schools that have tables and not desks. We moved really quickly to place orders for desks, some of which I believe are arriving tomorrow or next week. So it's our plan to be ready to appropriately physical distance students according to the guidance in classrooms. Related to the physical distancing, there is guidance on mixing of groups. The expectation is that at the elementary level, there essentially should be very little or none. And at the middle and high school, where it's a little bit harder to avoid the mixing of groups, they're recommending that we do so by cohorting to the extent possible to prevent that mixing. Relative to class size, I know that I've received a couple of emails from folks on this and I've had conversations about it. There is no guidance that explicitly declares a class size maximum. Instead, the recommendation is to follow the physical distancing guideline. For example, you could use a very large space, a library, a gymnasium, and physical distance appropriately 40 students, which is why the state went away from saying the class size maximum is X, because they know that there are different classroom sizes that would be used. The key is to maximize on the or pay attention to the physical distancing. We all can expect that a big part of our lives when we reopen will involve protocols around hand sanitizing and hand washing. They're recommending before school as students arrive, as they arrive even into the classroom. If there are mask breaks, and we suspect that there will be, that students are sanitizing their hands before taking off their masks, and then certainly at the end of the day. Here, I'll put another pin in and just say we've ordered enough through our first round of ordering, enough hand sanitizer to last us until January. We're planning to put an order in for more, and by enough, I mean significant amounts for individual classrooms, as well as hand sanitizing stanchions that'll be in at entry doors, egresses, and strategically placed in hallways as well. Also part of the guidance, every school needs to have an isolation space should a student exhibit symptoms where he or she would wait for a parent to come pick him or her up. In a few minutes, I'll talk a little bit about where we are, but in every school, we've identified those spaces. Relative to the guidance, they're requiring that every school and every district have plans for 3 scenarios. You'll notice all the way over to the left, no one is talking about, there is no option for returning without restrictions. I've received a couple of emails asking for that. If you're asking for that, I can tell you right now, you're going to be disappointed. We're not going that direction. We're planning for the 3 scenarios that you see to the right that are numbered as such. in-person learning with safety requirements, which involves the physical distancing, the protocols around hand washing, things of that nature. There's a lot more that goes into that. Those are just a couple of the features of the in-person learning with safety requirements. A plan for hybrid learning in scenarios where either the enrollment necessitates hybrid or a situation necessitates hybrid. That's some learning in school in person and some learning at home. And then finally, remote learning, full remote learning, where we are doing essentially what we were doing, but in a different way between the months of March and June. The DESE describes these as a continuum based on what's happening in a particular community or statewide. But essentially, the expectation is that schools be prepared or districts be prepared for each one of these spaces along that continuum. Okay. So we've not received any guidance yet on, it would be specific to Lynn Tech. However, Carissa Karakitis is working hard to develop what they think would be an appropriate and safe plan to accommodate in-person instruction. There is nothing yet officially on the 180-day requirement, although yesterday in a call, the commissioner said in no uncertain terms that something is forthcoming in writing that would essentially allow districts to engage in a 175-day school year, which would mean 5 days it would be able to leverage for professional development, which I was screaming hallelujah, and I know others were as well, because that's going to be a really important piece of our ability to serve students well next year, the time to learn together. Time on learning, there's been no official communication on that other than to say, to the extent that transportation impacts time on learning, which it will, there may be some flexibility. There's been nothing specific on how many hours in full remote learning are expected to be focused on tasks related to learning. Nothing specific to hybrid learning, the specific number of hours. Right now, that's a guess at best. And then finally, we're awaiting official guidance on, they call them electives. I call them part of our core of what we do. Instrumental music, chorus, and phys ed. We've got no guidance on that. And then finally, 2 days ago, there was a vote to push athletics at the high school level back to a fall season start of September 14th at the earliest. I have a daughter who will be a senior who plays a sport and is worried about losing that. And we've had some real hard conversations about what the reality might actually be related to sports next fall. There have been some questions about budget. As we all know, tax day was on the 15th. We've heard nothing about revenues just as of yet. In the guidance, there's specific language that says we should assume a level service budget, but we won't know until a few weeks yet. So we've not yet developed or prepared a budget for FY21, but we suspect we'll know specifics soon. We do have a little bit of a safety net through the ESSER funds, Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Funds. For Lynn Public Schools, that means $4.9 million less what we are responsible to give to eligible private schools in the city. Those amounts are actually pretty small, so the lion's share of that 4.9 will bring to bear on servicing students to the best of our ability next year. Just really quickly, and then I'm almost done talking here. Next steps, and I'm really intentional about saying these are not our first steps. I mean, we've been working really, really hard, really since last spring. Buy the right stuff. I mentioned about the PPE that we've purchased, the masks, the sanitizer, the gowns. We're getting very specific now about the kinds of PPE, investigating masks that have a clear feature on the front that allow people to see each other talking. We've ordered a couple of thousand face shields, things of that nature. Technology I outlined in the letter to you earlier this week. That's going to play a critical role in our effort to work with students and families next year. We are one-to-one, or will be when all the devices arrive, one-to-one for students in grades 3 to 12. We just signed and submitted a grant earlier this week where we're applying for the remainder of the devices to support K to 2. And that includes a healthy amount of iPads, things of that nature. And then we've purchased laptops for staff that we expect to receive in the next couple of weeks. As you might imagine, the supply lines, the supply chains are not operating, as quickly as we would like. So things are kind of coming in bits and pieces, but we hope to be prepared and ready by September. And then finally, to prepare the classroom spaces, to prepare schools in total for what needs to be done safely. That means removing a lot of furniture, and we are inches away from securing a storage space right here in Lynn that will accommodate, way more than we need. It's way more storage space than we need. So we're feeling pretty good about that. Know the right stuff. We're in the process of building a professional development framework that will include everything from the health and safety stuff to trauma and response, because we know how hard these times have been for students and their families, and of course, instruction. Ask the right stuff. We're on the tail end of the surveys and we're still making sense of them. Thank you all for responding to it. It's very, very helpful for our thinking and planning. Those are not surveys. These are not things that we ask people to complete and then they sit on a shelf. We pay really close attention to the feedback or the input that we receive from the respondents. Analyze the right stuff. That's the space analyses that, I don't know if there are any principals watching right now, but thank you to you and whoever participated with you in completing those analyses. We're talking not just looking at spreadsheets that describe classrooms. We're talking about going into classrooms and measuring painstakingly detailed endeavors there. And then we're kind of taking a big rock approach to this. And frankly, I think that big rock approach is the approach you should take to all planning, which is to put the biggest pieces in place first and then drill down to specificity with the smaller pieces. You can't put the small pieces in first and then try to put the big pieces in. And so we're finalizing the reopening framework, and then we intend to get really, really granular with the details around how we're doing school come the fall. And I don't think I need to tell you this, but this is really hard. The timeline is really tight. The guidelines come out in sort of piecemeal fashion. For a case in point, the transportation and facilities guidelines came out at 10 p.m. last night. Special education came out 2 weeks ago. So as these things come out, we are hustling to try to put things together on a very short timeline. This is very much akin to starting all over, building the Lynn Public Schools from the ground up. in about 2 months. And so we're working at it, but I think we've got the right people to make this happen. So this is just a slide just indicating the kinds of, how I've responded and how I've asked leadership to respond to questions about where we are, how decisions are being made, things of that nature. The one that I would just draw your attention to that I say very, very frequently is your safety, our students' safety is my foremost priority. If we get to a point where we don't think we can safely accommodate students based on any number of factors, then I'm going to push really hard for us to be full remote. But it appears as though right now, based on the analyses that we've done, the work that we're doing, that we actually can safely accommodate students and staff with certain conditions. And I'll just leave it there. So now I'm going to get out of this, and you'll be able to see me, and I'll be able to see your comments. Let's see. I would love to hear from you. I'm back. Now I can see. Yeah, so let me be really clear with what I'd like to do with our remaining time, and I've budgeted an hour for this. Is what's helpful for me is when people send emails to the LPS reopening email address or post comments here, because it helps us decide where to place emphasis on the messaging. And it's also going to help us create a really substantive, frequently asked questions document. And then it also helps us in our thinking, because sometimes people ask a question, and I'll just be very honest with you. We'll say, yeah, we haven't thought about that yet. There's just so many details involved in doing this work to prepare. So your comments, your questions, your concerns, your thoughts are really, really helpful. So let's see. Okay. So if I could just address one thing that I see here about ventilation. The ISD has been amazing, and I don't know. I mean, we're up to 400 folks on right now. If you know anybody that works for ISD, you see anybody that works for ISD, give them a thumbs up. Don't pat them on the back. Give them a thumbs up because they've been really, really responsive, very thorough, and honest with us about a reopening scenario for the fall. And so right now, the question here I see from Diane about ventilation is a question that will clearly be marked in a frequently asked questions document. And it's something that we're going to need to do a lot of messaging around. We've got 11 buildings that are over 100 years old. And, the logic that people apply to that, fairly so is, geez, the air exchange in those buildings must not be so great. That's not entirely true. I'll say that first. Before all of this, there was a standard for air quality and air exchange that had to be met. ISD is taking that standard and going up a few notches to create an even safer scenario. And that includes sanitizing some of the air exchange apparatus. It means using higher grade filters. Actually, the guidance on facilities just came out, as I said, last night. And thankfully, the kinds of things that ISD has said that they're beginning to do right now showed up in that guidance document as things schools should be doing. Using higher grade filters, in scenarios, and I know that there's some buildings where the windows don't work. They've done a building to building analysis, and this is going to be an ongoing thing where there's going to be repair, remediation, all in an effort to get ready. I know that there are some classrooms that simply should not be used, and they won't be used. And I'm asking ISD not to sort of blow smoke here, to be very, very upfront with us, because when I commit to parents that, we've done this work, we've done these adjustments, we've made these adjustments. I want to be, on point and honest with them about that. I don't want there to be, a couple of cases that were on the fence or maybe not quite right. We really want to be thorough and honest in this case. I see the thing about the fans. Now, I'll just say this really quickly. I received an email about a month ago from someone who said, those hand dryers in schools are not good. They, I know Sheila's probably laughing at me right now. My light turns off if I don't move enough over a period of time. So sometimes I have to go like this to get it to turn back on. But I've done it enough that I'm no longer embarrassed about it. The hand dryers, the parent thought that the hand dryers spread droplets all around the bathroom and should no longer be used. And I said, geez, I've been in a number of public spaces, in recent weeks, and the hand dryers are still in use there. I've not seen any state guidance on that. So we're going to proceed. But in the guidance that came out last night, they discouraged the use of hand dryers for the very reason that the parent outlined. And so we're going to be also disabling those hand dryers and going back to the paper towel approach. The fans piece, we need to get some more information on. I know that some folks have been told that has not come from me or from my office, but that's something that we need to look further into. Yeah, just kind of looking to see what we got here. And thank you for commenting. And I can save all of these. So thank you for that. So the question about emptying the classrooms, that was really hard, and I had an exchange, fairly lengthy exchange with one teacher who, I know that magic happens in that classroom, and most of the magic is between the teacher and the students. But what makes those spaces so magical is that when you walk into them, the stuff that's in there, whether a student is paying attention or not paying attention, there are things all around that are engaging, that draw their attention, that draw their interests. I know that. But I guess what I would go back to is what research says about the benefit of in-person instruction over remote or virtual. It's not even close. And so while the space may not be what it was, I still think, and I believe, actually this came up in the school committee meeting about a week ago, I believe deeply in our staff's ability to still make that experience magical and beneficial for students. There will not be the bookcases, some of the furniture is coming out to create a means through which we can safely physical distance students. So it will not look or feel the same immediately. But I have great confidence and great faith in our team to still make that experience magical for kids. Um, okay. Okay. These are some really, really good questions. Um, so there's one comment in here about children and staff testing positive in summer programs. I mean, I've heard and read the same things, and I think the science is emerging and in agreement that children, initially it was thought that children weren't susceptible to COVID-19. Obviously, that thinking has evolved and changed. And so rest assured, for me, that means what sort of moves, what conditions, what protocols and procedures need to be in place to create the safest possible scenario for in-person instruction. And I'm not going to go there right now on the mask conversation, but I would say that there's a robust conversation happening amongst superintendents and districts. We know that the recommendation is for students to wear masks grades 2 and up. There's a robust conversation happening around why not grades. If you have a pre-K, K, and 1. If you're going to build a mask community, one that embraces what has been described to be one of the most effective means to mitigate the spread, why wouldn't you have all students wearing them? And for the teachers in those classrooms, some of whom have reached out, I think there are some deep concerns about just sort of willy-nilly making a decision that all of those students would not take that protective measure. So rest assured that that is definitely being thought about and talked about. And let me be clear also, I know that there are students who have sensory issues. We have students who have medical conditions that make mask wearing really challenging, if not impossible. I understand that, and that's an acceptable exception. But much more to come on that. But just rest assured that that's a conversation that's being had. Whoever said shame on Desi for just now releasing these things, I mean, I didn't say that, but I'm not disagreeing either. Yeah, so there's one thought in here that I'll just respond to really quickly about the laptops. Yes, can we get, so this is one of those things, the question from Allison, I hope you don't mind me, well, everybody can see that you wrote it. So about clear guidance around the laptops. So, this is one of those things where like we are hustling to try to, sort of keep things moving. The laptops belong to the district, and there's an expectation that students take care of them. Are some going to get broken? Yes. Are some going to get stolen or lost? Yes. Although having been a principal at a school that was one-to-one some time ago, I was both surprised and impressed by how careful students were with the devices. But in any case, we don't want families feeling afraid to take that device, to take that tool, which is going to be critical as we look ahead to next year, because they're worried that they'll have to pay for it if they break it. So Guidance on that is forthcoming. So someone asked, do I know if we'll be getting storage or not? No, we're not gonna throw people's stuff away. The storage space that we've identified, which I need to wait till the signatures have happened, is huge. It's right in the center of town. It can accommodate more than way more than we need, and so I would not worry about your stuff being thrown away. Okay, so Blue Eyed Girl asks about teacher testing. That did come up yesterday in the call with the commissioner. I know that they are thinking about that, and that's kind of where they left it. And so I would just briefly editorialize on that. While that might be an important step, we have to remember that it's temporary, right? So you might get tested on Monday, but on Wednesday, you might come in contact with or get infected, and then that, so what about that test on Monday? And so I think that's could be an important factor. I just don't know that it's going to be the kind of safety blanket that people think it would be. Well, thank you, grade 3 teacher, who says this can't be an easy job. It's not, but I'll tell you what makes it doable is you. This is not a competition. I keep telling other superintendents that this is not a competition. As districts were making moves to support families, in March. But I'll tell you here, both, I don't know if Sheila's on, Dave Hegan, we worked really, really well together. We all have been working really well together. The extent to which we can stay together, I think we can make this happen. I know there are strong thoughts, strong feelings, lots of unanswered questions, but the extent to which we stay together as a team, it's only going to benefit kids. And so I think the thing that I can do is do this kind of thing more frequently in the up and coming weeks to share with you, to give you an opportunity to ask questions, share thoughts, concerns, and then we've got a lot of learning to do together. No one has ever done this before. Anybody who says they have is lying to you. We're all sort of feeling our way around, but trying our level best to make this work well for kids ultimately. So there's a couple of questions, and this is going to come out more formally soon, about personnel situations where people, care for elderly folks at home, or have someone at home who is immunocompromised or has, is medically fragile in one way or another. These are some of the tough questions that we have to face and deal with. Some of the answer is rooted in law, both in the Family Medical Leave Act and also the Families First Coronavirus Recovery Act. I think that's what it is, FFCRA. Some of the answers lie there, but there's also like a pretty significant gray space there where, there need to be some agreements with the unions. And so more to come there. And we're going to do this as quickly as we can. But that's the best we can do, is as quickly as we can. Let's see. Okay. Yep, that's the personnel question. And that goes for, under that umbrella of the personnel questions that someone asked, what if it's just not safe for me as an individual to return. I mean, that's something that, again, we're going to have to deal with in partnership with the unions. But again, some of the answers can be found in the law, and I see it as my responsibility to make you aware of that. The other thing I would say is, we surveyed families also, and this was the best response we've gotten. I think we've done maybe 4 surveys since March, and 2,500. That was the number. It never went higher than that. No matter how hard we tried, no matter how many calls or whatever. But this one was a lot better. The response was a lot stronger. And in that family survey, there were a healthy amount of students who, or families who said that they don't intend to send their students to school in the fall. And they have that right. That does not mean that they withdraw from the Lynn Public Schools unless they want to, and then they're on their own. But it does mean that they have a right to keep their child home, and it's our responsibility to provide them an education. DESE is going to give districts some help with that. They're put an RFP out for a statewide learning management system, not like Schoology, like ours, but more like Apex, if you're familiar with that, where students actually take a class online separate and apart from Lynn Public School staff. They're working on that. That's not going to be ready right at the beginning of the school year, but that will be an option for families. I'm not kicking any family to the curb, no matter whether they decide to do in person with us or decide to keep their child home and leverage a third party excuse me, option for education. I still want Lynn Public School staff connecting with those students and with those families. And so there are going to be some opportunities that will be full remote. Again, we're a ways away from drilling down to the details on that, but I just know that families have a right to keep their child home. I know that we have a responsibility to educate them. I can't say with any level of specificity right now exactly what that would look like, other than to say that there needs to be LPS staff connecting with those kids and with those families to support them through full virtual. Yeah. So one of the many concerns. So last Friday, guidance came out outlining the scenarios around, what happens when there's a case at school, a student or a staff member is is diagnosed as having COVID, and what the protocol will be. I mean, we're deeply concerned about rolling and large absences, both with staff and students. There isn't necessarily an elegant solution to that just yet, and so. Michael F. That is something that we're thinking about, definitely. So Marianne, just a quick clarification. If a family decides to keep his or her student home and they decide to opt for that statewide LMS, learning management system, outside of the Lynn Public Schools, they are still a Lynn Public School student. And actually for participation in the statewide LMS, there's a cost. I don't yet know what it is, but there is a per pupil cost for that. But those students are still part of the funding formula for the Lynn Public Schools, unless or until that family withdraws their student and decides, maybe I want to send them to, the Online Connections Academy or one of the other, virtual schools outside of the Lynn Public Schools. So I think I'll address one more, and then the 10 o'clock hour is here. I typically run a little bit behind to about everything I do, but trying to stay on here. Yep, I already mentioned that families can opt for remote learning, even if we go in person. Yes, they can. Yeah. So I'm just scrolling back up just really quickly. Maria, the question about the inclusion model, how does that work with Schoology? That's something that we're working on right now. Again, I really meant it when I said, this is much akin to, starting new and building an entire school system with all the approaches and all of the procedures, all of the, research-based moves that we engage in, just starting new. And so that's something that, definitely aware of. Felicia Jamerson is working really hard to make sure that we come up with something that is viable and safe in terms of inclusion. Special ed guidance is pretty much made clear that there's no relaxation of expectations, which I respect and appreciate. We just need to be really thoughtful and creative about how we service students according to their IEP. So that's a question that we're deeply aware of. So I'm going to do this again. I'm probably going to need to send out another link because I started today on day 2, and there were about 12 people over there saying, "Hey, this is day 2." So I'm gonna do this again on Monday, and we'll do it in the evening hour for folks who are otherwise engaged at this point, so they have a chance. I welcome you to come back again. I'm pretty much going to do the same thing, sort of give an overview of the DESE guidance, and that there's new guidance coming out. What feels like daily, but occasionally there may be some additional pieces that I add to that slide deck, but essentially it'll be the same, and I'll engage in the same way. And I did not say explicitly. I know in the agenda it said, "When will you hear from me again?" I'm thinking that at this point there should probably be weekly updates. There may not be a ton of difference between the weeks, because there are some things that have to go through processes behind the scenes before they can be made public. So there may not be a huge difference, but just want to give, say to folks what's going on, and also give you an opportunity to express your thoughts and your concerns and ask your questions. That is really, really helpful for me, the questions. So with that, I hope you have a wonderful Thursday, a good weekend, and I will be in touch. Stay safe and well.